Yes, I believe, ladies and gentlemen, we have a rather interesting topic to discuss today. A rather interesting one. That, of course, is the subject on Mario Kart World of whether or not this particular game is overpriced. Now, I have seen many interesting tales surrounding Mario Kart World. Of course, stating on the internet that this game has been vastly overpriced at the sum in the United States money of $80. $80 for Mario Kart World. In the United Kingdom and Europe, the price situation is even more, shall we say, intense, charging around about the equivalent of $90 or more in these markets. In the United Kingdom, of course, priced at £74.99. I do believe in Europe, priced as much as €80. So this is a rather steep price, one would initially say, for a Mario Kart game. Of course, we do recall in the past Nintendo games being priced around about the $50 to $60 to $70 mark, perhaps $69.99 US, etc. This, of course, represents a new height for Nintendo, going now to charge us $80 for this latest invention. The Switch 2 itself, of course, an expensive console, a bundle with Mario Kart World being offered in the $500 price range. Now, of course, many of us recall from years ago the very famous meme surrounding E3 with the PlayStation gentleman stating $599 US. Well, here we are with $499 for Nintendo. But I think the question to be asked is really this an overpricing of the latest entry in the Mario Kart series? In order to answer this question, we have to take into account a number of factors. Firstly, as we can see on the screen here, the graphics on offer in Mario Kart, in the latest game, Mario Kart World, on a handheld console are of course beyond anything we've seen before. The Switch 2 is a powerful piece of hardware, there can be no doubt about that. Now, of course, powerful pieces of hardware in handheld form, as this one is, are rather expensive to manufacture, and ultimately Nintendo aren't made of money. They're going to have to pass on some of that cost to us as the consumer. Now, in years past, of course, Nintendo would take steps to avoid this, but this time it seems they've gone the 4K 120 FPS route with flashy high-resolution graphics on offer here. Of course, these things aren't cheap to make. Now, this cost, as I said, being passed on to us not only in the potentially $400 to $500 hardware, but also in the $80 price tag on this game. But is it overpriced? Really? Firstly, we have to understand we are now, in the modern times, in a bit of a cost of a living crisis, not only in the United Kingdom, but also in other countries as well. The cost of living, of course, has gone up. Inflation has soared massively and has stayed high for a number of years, certainly in the UK and I'm sure elsewhere. We've seen an increasing of prices across the board. We also recently, of course, see a bit of economic turmoil going on in current affairs. So are we really surprised that Mario Kart World is more expensive? Are we bashing Nintendo here for no reason when we say, well, this game's $80, that's more than it used to cost? Well, is it? That's the question. Let's take a look at some facts from years ago. So, the original Super Mario Kart game on the Super Nintendo. Remember that one? All those years ago, 1992, the early 90s. Back then, the price of a Super Nintendo game was $60 to $70. That's how much it was. So you're going to say to me, well, Mario Kart World's $80, so that's more. But it's not, of course, because the value of your money changes over the years. You see, inflation, that's what it does. The cost of a Super Mario Kart today, inflation adjusted, would have been $147. I'm not exaggerating, I'm telling you the inflation adjusted cost of a game originally costing $64.99 US in 1992. So, if we were paying back in those days $140 plus for a video game, actually Mario Kart World's quite cheap by comparison. That's interesting, isn't it? Of course, it's this initial price tag that scares people. They see $80 and think, oh, no, that's far too expensive. But of course, our wages have gone up since those days. The price of bread has gone up. Things have become more expensive. Is this really a bit of a storm in a teacup, fellows? It might be. Just while I'm observing these things. Hello, Flippy787. Welcome to the chat, and I shall be taking comments from the chat as we proceed through this analysis. Now, moving on here, I'd like to give you another example, fellows. Mario Kart 64. Yes, one of the classics of the series. Nintendo 64 games were notoriously expensive, with Nintendo in the 1990s, the late 90s, charging as much as £70 for a video game, or perhaps around about $65 back in those days. Maybe even 70, I don't know. Now, assuming $65 for Mario Kart 64, we're going to be conservative, because remember, 64 games were pricey. Assuming $65, today, the inflation-adjusted cost of Mario Kart 64 would have been $130. That is $50 more than the asking price for Mario Kart World at $80. If we take inflation into account, the Mario Kart games have not become more expensive since those days, they've become cheaper, and quite a lot so. Now, of course, many people are saying, but we're not talking about the very old days of video games when they used to come in boxes all the time, no digital back in those days, and used to get one's mates round to play it on the couch, local co-op or local competitive gaming, as it were. Things have changed since those days, GameChap. Well, of course they have. But we can't really say that Mario Kart World is being charged, at an extortionate sum. It's not, okay, by comparison to those days. Also, if we go back, for example, to 2012, to the early part of the 2010s, of course we were seeing similar or perhaps slightly lower prices back then, and maybe people will say, yes, it wasn't quite $80, but again, if you factor inflation into account, it would still have been more expensive back then than the current price being asked for Mario Kart World, which is $80. You see, the market has changed. Things have changed. Inflation has happened. The economy has changed, ladies and gentlemen. Mario Kart World, I don't think, is as expensive as many people are making it out to be. We have to, as I say, consider those two factors, inflation and also the quality of the hardware and the game on offer. Previously, Nintendo would adopt an approach of, using existing seasoned hardware in their video game design ethos. They would say, no, we're not going to get the latest and greatest graphics, as in the case, for example, of the Nintendo Wii, or even the original Nintendo Entertainment System. They would simply take advantage of existing cheap hardware and use that to create compelling video game experiences. In other words, they try to get the job done as cheaply as possible and rely on excellent software to save the day. Now, we've seen that many times in their history. As I said, the Nintendo Wii being a prime example. More recently, the Nintendo Switch, an absolutely clear example of this behavior. They have indeed used, a handheld device and taken the world by storm with it, even though it hasn't necessarily had the best graphics, 1080p, etc. and so forth. Okay, so this is very interesting to me, and this time, of course, though, the Nintendo Switch 2, they've gone a bit of a different route. They've gone the 4K, 1080p, HD, Super HD, whatever you want to say, latest fancy word for it, route. They've tried to compete with places like the PlayStation, with consoles I mean, like the PlayStation, the latest Xbox, and of course PC with these graphics, undoubtedly. They're trying to say, yes, we have graphics too here at Nintendo now. Gone are the days of jaggies, we've now got smooth graphics, smooth frame rates, etc. and so forth. This must be reflected in the price. They cannot make a Nintendo Switch 2 console for peanuts, as much as they'd like to. They can't do that. You're going to have to pay a bit more. Now, am I defending Nintendo? Well, not entirely. I do know, and I must say, when I first saw the Nintendo Switch 2's price and Mario Kart World's price, I was surprised too at first. Because I thought, yes, this is much more expensive than I was expecting. I was anticipating a price in the £300 or around $400 range. I wasn't expecting them to go $500 with the game. That's quite expensive. But again, we have to factor in that the world has changed. High performance indeed costs money. This is not 2010 anymore. We are in the future now, fellows. Things are more expensive than they used to be. So is $80 really robbery? I don't think it is. I think $80 could even be considered a fair price when we consider that in today's money, the original Super Mario Kart, as I said, was $147. That is getting on for nearly double the asking price. Now, Nintendo have, of course, offered Mario Kart World slightly cheaper if you choose to buy the digital-only version. On my channel, I'm not going to recommend that. I recommend that you indeed go for the physical version, but then I might be biased since I like physical video games. The reasoning, of course, being that, it's just nice to have the game in your hand. That way it belongs to you, and no amount of digital shenanigans can take that game away from you. But, of course, you pay a slight premium for that. If you ask me, is it worth it? Absolutely yes. This is not a lot of money in today's money for this game. It's a fine technical achievement. It certainly looks like a lot of fun. I've seen comments all over the internet with people saying things about this price. And what I'm going to do is actually bring up some of those comments here on the stream, because I'd like to react to a couple of those. So stand by whilst I do that. I'm going to head off to the internet here, and I'm going to quote you some things where people have been complaining about the price of Mario Kart 8 and saying it's just far too much, and really, is it? So I've typed in Mario... Did I say Mario Kart 8? Of course I mean Mario Kart World. I'm thinking of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So I'm just going to quote a few things here, taking, for example, various Reddit posts. Now, let's see. We're going to see here a user from Reddit, according to a website here, stating, "I think they're trying to test the waters and see how far they can push people," even going so far as to call the pricing absolutely disgusting and greedy behaviour. Hard to disagree there, my good sir. I do not agree with you. This price is not as much as you think it is. The digital version, of course, as I said, $80. It seems some people are thinking the physical version might be more, perhaps in the closer to $90 or even $100 price range in Europe. Well, it's not as hefty as people are making it out to be. I honestly, I don't really see where all this has come from. I think we've got a bit of a storm in the teacup here, fellows. People are calling here on Reddit, I'm quoting here, as crazy as the Mario Kart World price point is. Crazy. They're calling it crazy. It's not that crazy. It really isn't. People saying that they want Nintendo want people to buy the bundle. Well, let's talk about that bundle for just a brief moment, shall we? The bundle for this game includes the digital-only copy. It does not include a physical copy of the game. It doesn't, right? It includes the digital copy. That, of course, means that you don't get a game card inside the box. That is something that is strange to me. I don't know why they do that. Personally, if I was going to be buying the bundle, I'd be looking for something physical. But that, really, I have entered a tangent there. I just think, in my opinion, physical games are better. So, let's move on here. If you see a couple of further comments. A gentleman here stating €90 for the physical edition. Absolute madness. Is it really, my good sir? Is it as mad as you think it is? In the United Kingdom, digital £67, physical £75. Again, around the $90 mark for the physical edition. But factoring in inflation, if we take the $90 price, or in this case, well, let's take the $80 price, for example. If we took that back to the early 1990s, it would be like back then paying the equivalent of around about $40 or $50. It really is that cheap compared to those days. Inflation has happened, things have gone up. This is not as much as people are saying it is. Another comment here stating, "This is genuinely ridiculous," as we heard from the quote earlier. Another response to that saying, "Everything we saw today was disgusting, greedy behaviour. Who in their right mind spends close to €100 on, no offence, a children's racing game?" Absolute genuine anger coming out here from the internet, with people saying, no, this is simply far too much. Another comment states £75 for a physical version is mad. It's the same as the new Pro Controller. My good sirs, I do understand your frustration, I really do, but this is not as much as you think it is. After all, as I said, we are in 2025 now. Things are different. Indeed, this modern era has foisted upon us a time of greatly increased prices. Of course, increased wages, increased pay has followed that. But we must understand, I say, my jolly stream's paused, I didn't realise. Anyway, there it is, it's playing now. Of course, we must understand that, as I said, it's not the 90s anymore. Things have changed. We can scarcely expect any longer the prices to stay the same as they did back then. Of course, we'd love that if they did. You know, undoubtedly, it would be a great thing. You know, if we could stay with those prices and forever, video games would only be $70. But of course, that does not make any economic sense. It does not make financial sense. Nintendo wouldn't be making any profit at all if they kept using 90s prices. It would just be completely impossible. This, of course, is on a side tangent here, is reflected in the price of the console. Again, they cannot manufacture powerful hardware like this, packing so much power into a small console with adequate cooling for just a few dollars. It can't be done. They're going to have to pass on the cost of manufacturing to the consumer. Now, it could be argued that Nintendo could have taken a different route. They could have said to themselves, no, we're not going to fall into the trap of, going the powerful hardware route. We shall just go the Nintendo Wii route, and we're going to offer a simple and, relatively powerful piece of hardware, but nothing crazy, no 4K, nothing like that. But then perhaps their detractors would have said, well, look at Nintendo's still stuck in the past. They've still got PlayStation 2 graphics, while PS5's got all these graphics. Yes, but where's the PS5's games, for goodness jolly sake? They're not there, are they? On Nintendo consoles, such as the Switch 2, we have the games that ultimately people of all ages want to play. And if you ask me, their only serious competitor right now is Steam, with its plethora of games. Perhaps, of course, we have to also include games like Fortnite, but I'm saying primary competition for Nintendo right now would be Steam. These Nintendo chaps certainly have got a winning strategy here, and if they have to charge a little bit more to stay in business, I understand that. I don't think we should all go throwing in our towels, getting our pitchforks out, and getting very, very angry at Nintendo for staying with the economic times. They can't produce games for free, fellows. They really can't. As I said, the caliber of game being on offer here is certainly not low. This is a high caliber game. It is something where we have seen a huge improvement in the graphics, in the style of the game. Look at this. These are lovely, charming animations. This is a great set of characters. There's loads of characters this time around. These, of course, had a great bit of innovation there with the world idea where you can drive between courses. I'm liking that. Is it a bit steeper than we used to have to pay in the past? Absolutely. Is it ridiculous? Is it excessive? Is it absolute madness? Is it greedy and disgusting and all those other things? No, I don't believe it is, not at all. This game is not overpriced. In fact, it's fairly priced, and in comparison with historical prices, one could even say it's a bit of a good deal. Furthermore, can you imagine what a mint and sealed copy of Mario Kart World is going to be worth in years to come? A lot more than $80, I can tell you that much. So no, I don't buy this whole thing of Mario Kart World being steeply overpriced, being, charged an absolute fortune, and we're all going to have to smash our piggy banks with the largest hammer we can find in order to be able to get near this racing game. No, not at all. I think people will not only be able to sustain, or rather, in this case, to handle the cost. I believe they will swallow it without any questions being asked. I think right now we're seeing a bit of internet drama, a bit of a storm in a teacup, and this will blow over once people realise how good Mario Kart World is. The only other concern I'd have, of course, is whether or not Switch 2 will be commonly adopted, since, we've been here before once. We had the Nintendo Wii, and then we had the Wii U, which didn't sell very well because people thought it was some kind of upgrade for the Wii or something. Now they've done, well, one could say something similar here. We've got the Nintendo Switch 2, which follows on from the Nintendo Switch. So are parents going to say, well, we don't need to buy a Switch 2, we've already got a Switch? We don't need Mario Kart. Well, we've already got a Mario Kart game. Perhaps the naming might not be, that useful for them. The exact same design of the console, the Joy-Cons, the stand. It's looking very similar. The console itself is not that much different from the original Switch. As I've said before, I think this could be the equivalent of a Nintendo Switch Pro, the model that never did emerge. It's looking to me like Switch 2 really is a kind of Switch Pro, but they've gone this full route where they said, nope, it's not a Switch Pro, this is the Switch 2, and they of course have made good on that promise by, bringing out a brand new Mario Kart game. So that's the strategy that they've used this time. I just hope that these internet rumours of excessive prices are not going to sink them. We are, of course, in an era, after all, fellows. Another point worth making here is that, we are in an era now where microtransactions within video games can sometimes be as pricey, or in many cases more expensive, than a full-priced video game. For example, take Fortnite. You can spend $40 in Fortnite for a skin, for a few skins. Not a skin pack, but a few skins, for example. The latest Mortal Kombat collaboration, for example. If you wanted to buy all of those items with V-Bucks, you're going to be looking at upwards of $40. There's no doubt about that. And that's for some skins and a car in a game. It's not even a brand new game. If you look at other video games, for example, Star Citizen, that a notorious example, you can pay hundreds of dollars for a single digital spaceship. Times have changed. These are not the 90s anymore. And even if they were the 90s, like I said earlier in the stream, prices in the 90s were actually higher than they are today. I don't get all this hate and all this Nintendo bashing going on. Let's have a look at the chat here, fellows, and see what's being said in here. I'm just going to Alt-Tab as I have to. Flippy787, I've always loved the top hat and proper gentleman behaviour on the channel. More channels should look to this one as a hallmark in how to compose oneself. Well, thank you very much, good sir. Much appreciated. I'm glad you approve, indeed. I just, as I said, I cannot get on board with all of this Nintendo bashing hatred. Yes, it's a bit annoying. We're going to have to stump up $10 more. It's not the end of the world, for goodness jolly sake. It's not. It really isn't. We'll get past it, fellows. I know we will. We'll get past this one. We've been through worse in the past. Look, prices are going to have to go up. In the future, we might even see upwards of $100 on Nintendo games. Yes, I know, it's awfully shocking, but of course, when that happens, wages will have increased as well. It's not like Nintendo are being greedy and saying we want to charge you $200 for Mario Kart World. It's hardly like that, is it? It's a bit more than last time. I mean, like I said, we've gone through so much financially since the launch of Mario Kart 8, the original launch. It's only to be expected it's going to cost more now. They can't keep those prices at rock bottom forever. Well, perhaps I'm sounding like a Nintendo defender now. I'm not. I really am not. Yes, I like Nintendo, but I'm not going to defend them mindlessly. But I am going to say that I think a lot of this hatred is unjustified. Mario Kart World is not necessarily overpriced. It may be in comparison to previous Mario Kart games, but when you factor in inflation, the hardware that we're dealing with here, which Nintendo has to pay for somehow, no, I don't think this is an overpriced title, fellows. I really don't. But there we are, indeed. I believe Mario Kart World is not quite the overpriced wonder people have made it out to be. I believe we will see a rather successful result for Nintendo here. They have launched their new console with a new Mario Kart game. They have not made the mistake of the Nintendo Wii U, where they launched with a Nintendo Land. Perish the thought. No. This time, they've gone with one of their biggest and best and largest caliber cannons, fellows. Largest caliber armaments. That is, of course, the Mario Kart series. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Mario Kart has sold a huge number of copies on the original Nintendo Switch. One of, if not the best-selling title on that game. They obviously are not messing around, they're not pulling any punches, they're not taking any chances when it comes to the launch of their latest, rather expensive piece of hardware. They are saying, yes, we understand you're going to have to pay more, but of course, ultimately, it's worth it, and it's not as bad as we think, as I say, adjusting for inflation. We have, of course, had a bit of a quote from Doug Bowser, the CEO of Nintendo America, or certainly one of the chiefs over there anyway, at the very least, who has said that perhaps in the future they will look at different pricing for different video games. Perhaps a hark back to the Nintendo Entertainment System days, when, of course, in those days we had, prices ranging from $10 for budget titles right the way up to $60 for your very best games on the market back in those days. Perhaps Doug Bowser will, usher in a return to those days where higher budget titles like Mario Kart World might, for example, be $80, and then if we have more, shall we say, simpler titles, perhaps remakes of old games, perhaps a more budget or indie titles, we may see those priced at 60 or below. I don't think we're going to, let's not say that it's the end of the race in terms of pricing at this point. It's certainly not. There's many laps to go. We don't know what's going to happen. We cannot say that Nintendo will, stick to this path ever and charge $80, $90, $100 henceforth and forevermore. They're obviously going to respond to the market and price accordingly. They have other things to factor in with recent news. Let's give them a chance and see what happens to this game. Let's just watch. When the game comes out, we'll decide whether or not we want to buy it, and then of course they'll see if they have to keep the price at 80, increase it, decrease it, or whatever they're going to do, and I'm sure they'll get this right, fellows. Let's have a bit of faith in this company that's lasted more than 40 years in the video gaming industry so far. I don't think they're going to mess it up now, even if they have had a change of CEO. Yes, Mr. Iwata sadly is no longer with us. There's some new CEOs in charge now, but let's give them a chance and see where this goes before we start drawing conclusions and calling Mario Kart World an overpriced, disgusting, greedy game. It just isn't. That's not fair. It really isn't fair. Those are my thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to have a look at the chat here to see what you're saying. No, not at the moment. We seem to all be happy with that, and that's all well and good. I do believe, fellows, give it some time. We will wait and see what happens to Nintendo, as I said, with Mario Kart World, and whether or not they will end up making a mistake here. Getting blue-shelled, as the case may be, or indeed whether they'll have another winner. Personally, I don't think consumers are going to have any problem with this price. They're going to say, no, I've got enough money, I can afford that, it's Mario Kart, they're going to buy it. Let's hope that holds true for the other titles on the Switch too as well. But anyway, enough talking from me, ladies and gentlemen. These have been my thoughts on the Mario Kart World pricing situation. I feel this game is not overpriced, but quite a fair offering. Indeed, if you're watching the videogram of this recording, please do not hesitate to leave your comments in the comments section, and I shall review and possibly even respond depending on what you've got to say. So, also, as always, if you like this content, please do slap on a like, subscribe, ring that bell and whatnot for more such content and musings in the future. We shall have more news for you as it comes out from the Big N and their various array of software lineup, titles, library, if you will, and other such things. Thank you most kindly for joining me in this rather short but I hope interesting analysis of the Mario Kart World pricing situation, and I shall look forward to seeing you once more in the next exciting stream, and until then, I shall bid you farewell. farewell and a good day. Goodbye indeed. Tally-ho. Take care, chaps. See you later.